and a range of outstanding engines make BMW's little 2 Series Coupe a unique choice in the sports coupe segment. The car delivers all BMW's best bits distilled down into a compact, driver-focused package. In fact, it might just be the most enjoyable model that the Munich brand builds. Turn the clock back to the late 60s and early 70s and you'll find that BMW used to have a younger age profile. The customers who bought cars like their much-loved 2002 Tii and 2002 Turbo models were the kind of youthful, free-spirited people who would otherwise have gone for an Alfa Spider sports car or a Mini Cooper. But the Bavarian marque doesn't make machines like that anymore, or does it? Proof that they do is claimed to be delivered in the form of this model, the 2 Series Coupe. If the number's not familiar, then the size and positioning of this car might be. It was launched in early 2014 as a replacement for the 1 Series Coupe model that had been charming enthusiasts since 2007. Not even they, though, could ever have described a two-door 1 Series as an attractive-looking thing. This car, in contrast, sits much easier on the eye. With any coupe, that's half the battle won. In fact, what we've ended up with here could, on the quiet, be the best thing that BMW makes, at least from the point of view of the enthusiast. A little rear-wheel drive coupe in which the folds of the company's corporate approach have been shaken out a little. The racy 225D diesel and 228i petrol models are range highlights, and a spirited drive in either is enough to make a rival Volkswagen Scirocco, or indeed BMW's larger 4 Series Coupe, seem rather dull. Best of all is this potent 6-cylinder M235i variant, offering near supercar levels of performance. Whichever version you choose, though, a real driving experience should be on the cards. Let's put this car to the test. So, what's it like? Well, you settle in behind the wheel and everything seems just right. The driving position perfect. Already you're feeling like driving rather than merely travelling. Punch the starter button, get ready to set off, and you'll find yourself looking forward to finding a road that will put the Bavarian maker's bold claims for this car to the test. Get to the first open bend and you find yourself pushing a little harder than you might normally, just to see. Sure enough, power into a corner, dab the brakes, turn the wheel, and it's true. There's a feeling of complete control. Ideal 50-50 axle load distribution, optimised aerodynamics, a long wheelbase and a low, ideally balanced centre of gravity, combined with rear-wheel drive to give this car its unique agility. It's one of those that just feels right within the first 15 metres, this down to the sum of a whole series of small but important things that simply hit the right notes. The things I've just mentioned also combine with many others. Seating position, control weights, engine tractability, suspension refinement, basic ergonomics, stuff like that. As for the way that leaves you feeling, well, it's much like the sort of thing you probably heard about interviewers you've faced, often having made their decision before you've even got into your seat. First impressions are crucial, and this 2 Series nails them. If you've upgraded from the old 1 Series model, one of the first changes you're going to notice is the standard drive performance control system, the rocker switch for which you'll find down here by the gear stick. Now, you might be familiar with this kind of thing by now, a setup that allows you to tweak the steering, throttle and stability control system thresholds depending on the operating mode you select. Gear change times too, if like many 2 Series buyers, you decide against the slick 6-speed stick shifter and order your car with the 8-speed automatic paddle shift transmission. There's also an optional quicker shifting sport automatic transmission that features a natty launch control system for would-be Alonsos. If you ignore the attributes of drive performance control or select its most relaxed comfort or efficient Eco Pro settings, then the travelling experience in this car, though very comfortable, won't be especially memorable. Push the rocker switch forward into Sport though, and the reaction you get immediately feels keener and more alert. More like the kind of 2 Series enthusiasts would expect this car to be. If you ignore the lower SE or modern trim levels, your car will also come with an extra Sport Plus setting that'll sharpen things up even more and relax the DSC control to provide a little more tail-out cornering leeway if you should be that way inclined. To really create that kind of machine though, you have to spend a bit of extra money. Possibly on stiff M Sport suspension, but preferably on the M Sport adaptive suspension setup that's on the model that I'm driving here. A system that works as part of drive performance control and is able to alter the ride to suit the road that you're on and the mood that you're in. As with most BMWs, it's crucial that you get a few things right when you're specifying your car. As usual, I'd counsel you to carefully consider whether you really want the kind of larger wheel rim size that will inevitably spoil the ride quality. Also, think twice before upgrading some of the things that are already very good anyway. The Steptronic electric power steering, for example, which in its standard form is feelsome and unerringly accurate. Many think that the extra cost variable sport steering system feels a little artificial. The same applies to the optional limited slip differential, there to help get the power down through tight corners, but not hugely more effective than the standard electronic system in doing so. You could even say the same about the brakes, though if you're of a track day disposition, then the M Sport braking system's well worth a look. Continuing on the less is more kind of theme, I wouldn't worry too much if your budget can't stretch to the really expensive models. All 2 Series Coupe variants get twin-power turbo technology, and any one of them is going to be a pretty rewarding thing to own and to drive. Across the range, the slick shifting 6-speed manual gear shift is lovely, and the ride's good too, suppler than you'll find on, say, a 1 Series hatch, despite this car's extra cornering sharpness. It's as well, though, that the German marketeers have decided not to carry across the feeblest power plants from the 1 Series hatchback into this 2 Series lineup, which means that the range begins with 143 brake horsepower 218D or 184 brake horsepower 220D diesel models. Even the 218D makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 8.9 seconds on the way to 132 miles an hour. Figures the 220D improves to 7.2 seconds and 143 miles an hour. If you prefer not to fuel from the black pump, the 184 brake horsepower 220i petrol variant improves that to 7 seconds dead and 146 miles an hour. These kinds of figures give you some idea of the performance potential lurking further up the lineup, which of course is where the really exciting engines are to be found. The first of these, you may be surprised to learn, is a diesel, the 225D being my personal pick as one of the world's finest, and a car that in this 2 Series lineup comes only with 8-speed sport auto transmission. This variant's stoked-up 2-litre unit was the first all-aluminium oil burner in the world to achieve a specific output of over 100 brake horsepower per litre. And these days, twin turbos help it all the way to 218 brake horsepower, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 6.3 seconds dead, and a 150 mile an hour top speed, while the ability to cover 40 to 60 miles an hour in no more than around 4 seconds means you can slingshot past slower moving traffic as if it wasn't there. The 225D is, in other words, a really quick car, and rival marques have hulking great 6-cylinder diesels that can't match it. In fact, the only real issue with this particular car is the one that applies to all small BMWs fueled from the black pump, that of refinement. Other rivals now offer quieter diesel options. It's as simple as that. If this is an issue for you and the requirement is for a mainstream 2 Series model with a bit of extra poke, I'll direct you towards the 228i, the petrol-powered pocket rocket in the standard range. Here again you've a 4-cylinder engine with the punch and performance of a 6. In this case we're talking of a 245 brake horsepower 2-litre turbo 4 that catapults this coupe to 62 miles an hour in just 5.7 seconds on the way to 154 miles an hour. It's a desirable machine then, but here I've an even nicer one, the awesomely fast M235i. With this model I probably need to clear up a few product semantics. This M235i isn't a proper M car, like say an M3, an M4 or an M5, developed exclusively by the company's motorsport M division. BMW wants to leave space for a fully fledged M2 model to fill that role. Instead, this car sits within what the brand calls its M Performance lineup, kind of stepping stone between the faster versions of its standard models and the ultimate M car machines. This vehicle's predecessor, the much sought after 1 Series M Coupe, was one of the first of the M Performance cars to be launched and was quickly followed by the equally well received M135i Performance hatch. Think M Light and you won't be too far off the concept here. Or at least M Light in terms of the fact that you don't necessarily need a lottery win to afford the thing. In terms of performance though, well, you decide. At launch it was the only 6-cylinder 2 Series model you could buy and has 326 brake horsepower on tap, 1 brake horsepower more than a Porsche Cayman S if you're interested. So it's seriously quick, with more power than the M3s that used to adorn my bedroom wall. Select the Sport Plus setting on the Drive Performance controller and the manual version will get you to 62 miles an hour in 5 seconds dead, while the 8-speed Sport Automatic variant shaves a further couple of tenths off that time. Both versions are restricted to a top speed of 155 miles an hour, although BMW engineers reckon that with no speed limiter, these cars would top 170 miles an hour. That's serious performance for such a small coupe. Is this the most stylish small BMW coupe ever made? Many will think so. This car's predecessor, the old 1 Series Coupe, featured a blend of aesthetics that was never quite as comfortable as it could have been. From some angles it looked great, all muscle and attitude, while from others it looked about as elegant as Jimmy Nail in Jimmy Choo's. With this 2 Series though, it's a very different story. Squint and you can see elements of the previous model in the shape of the glass house, but some of that old awkwardness has gone, replaced by a far more elegant, cohesive look. Some might not see this car as being quite as good looking as the bigger 4 Series Coupe, but it's nevertheless a handsome thing. Don't worry, the neighbours will certainly notice. The front end is certainly more instantly appealing than before, less bluff and more stylish, with these almost feline headlights framing a classic kidney grille that's a broadened hall of mirrors affair compared to the Perta upright style used in BMWs of the past. What you probably won't notice is something the brand is especially proud of. It's aero curtain, a feature that channels airflow around the front of the car to reduce aerodynamic drag. Derived from race car technology, this sees air routed into 2 ducts in the front apron, which then flows out of a narrow opening at high speed in the wheel arch. This jet of air effectively covers the side of the front wheels like a curtain and so reduces turbulence. A move to the side reveals the brand's hallmark 3-box styling, a design approach originally founded on the company fitting long, straight-six engines that required some serious bonnet length. These days, this shape has almost become a design shorthand for the front-engine, rear-wheel drive approach, and it remains a more purposeful silhouette than anything close from Mercedes and Audi. The signature Hofmeister kink in the rear pillar remains, and you get these lovely swage lines that add plenty of shape to flanks which run right through to the muscular tail section. The banana-shaped sills of the old 1 Series have thankfully been ditched, and instead you get this far more elegant sweep up to this beefy rear wheel arch. It's part of a broader rear end that sees single-piece LED light units reach far into the car's flanks in a familiar L shape. At this point, it might strike you that this is quite a compact car when set against the rest of BMW's current product portfolio, but it's certainly grown in comparison to its predecessor. Break out the tape measure and you realise that compared to the old 1 Series Coupe, the Munich design team have added 72mm to the overall length, 26mm to the width, and sliced 15mm off the overall height. Lower, wider and longer is a good start when it comes to improving looks, though as a result, this 2 Series Coupe is now almost at the point where it's grown a size. You don't have to look far back in BMW's model history to find a 3 Series Coupe that was no bigger than this, namely the old E36 model that stayed in production until the turn of the century. And inside? Well, it depends what you're looking for. Compact Audi and Mercedes models shade BMW for interior flair these days, but somehow that doesn't seem to matter so much here. A driver-focused car should have a driver-focused cockpit, and this one does. In fact, there are very few small sporty models in the world that set you up better behind the wheel. Take a look around and, as I've already suggested, it's functional rather than flash, with the Munich maker's now familiar design language of 2 black-faced instruments in a driver-focused cowl. There's certainly plenty of space to stretch out, given this car's compact dimensions, though headroom will be a touch restricted if you opt for the extra-cost glass sunroof, and shorter drivers might feel as if the high waistline of the car is a bit enveloping. Over-the-shoulder visibility is a bit restricted too. Drivers used to the old 1 Series Coupe will find the front three-quarter vision better though, thanks to these slimmer A-pillars. Otherwise, the cabin will hold few surprises for existing BMW owners. Though there are a few plastic panels that feel quite hard to the touch, overall the high quality impresses, and it's this general classiness that makes it all feel special rather than any standout detailing. What I think the brand is very good at is deciding what functions should remain as dashboard buttons, like the ventilation and the stereo controls, and which ones should be squirreled away in the infotainment system menus, in this case an xDrive setup which has become one of the very best of its kind. Rear seat passengers meanwhile will be grateful for that boxy shape. It's certainly more spacious here than a more swoopily styled rival would be, even if legroom remains in somewhat short supply, despite the fact that it's increased by 21mm over the old 1 Series Coupe. Still, adults who aren't too lanky should be able to squeeze themselves in reasonably comfortably with a bit of cooperation from those ahead, provided that the folk in front aren't basketball players and the journey isn't too long. Though only a couple of people can be accommodated, a stowage compartment is provided in between, and there's a cockpit-like feel to these chairs that rather suits the character of the car. Most of the time, of course, you'll be using these seats to sling briefcases, jackets or designer shopping bags onto, or indeed folding them down to increase boot space. There's more of this than you might expect too. More, in fact, than you'd get in a supposedly more practical 5-door BMW 1 Series sports hatch. In fact, the 390-litre total cargo area capacity is 20 litres up on what the old 1 Series Coupe could offer, which means that even before you start pushing forward the 60/40 split folding rear bench, you've got more space to play with than you would in an everyday Focus or Golf family hatchback. No other compact coupe competitor can match this, and some are way behind. We're talking about 30% more luggage space than you get in a Volkswagen Scirocco, for example. Plus, there are cargo nets to tie your shopping down so you don't have to worry about attacking a few of your favourite back roads on the long route back from the supermarket. The 60/40 split folding rear bench just mentioned is standard, using these levers. But there's the optional extra flexibility of a 40-20-40 three-way folding arrangement with a through loading facility for long items like skis. In other words, though in choosing this BMW you'll have bought yourself a coupe, it's not a car without a certain level of practicality. expect to pay somewhere in the £25,000 to £35,000 bracket for your 2 Series Coupe, depending on the spec and the model variant you choose. Standard is SE trim, and from there you've the option of paying either £1,000 or £2,350 more to respectively upgrade to either Sport or M Sport specification. There's also the £1,500 option of 8-speed automatic transmission. Now, the entry-level 218D diesel variant will doubtless be the most popular model, but many buyers will probably be tempted to find the £1,500 premium necessary to upgrade this 143 brake horsepower model to 184 brake horsepower 220D diesel status. This 220D looks a good buy, priced at only £800 more than a petrol 220i variant that offers exactly the same power output. How do those prices compare with the BMW's rivals? Good question. Do you care about the handling purity of rear-wheel drive that this 2 Series model offers? If you do and don't have £40,000 to £50,000 to spend on a Porsche Cayman, then the only alternative is the design we know either as a Toyota GT86 or a Subaru BRZ. These cars come only in a single 2-litre 200 brake horsepower petrol guise, and in the case of the Toyota, sell for exactly the same money as the 220i Coupe. The Subaru will cost you slightly less. In both cases, you have to sacrifice a bit of performance over this BMW, and this 2 Series also holds a big advantage when it comes to interior space, residuals and build quality. Most buyers looking at this BMW, though, will be quite happy to consider front-wheel driven sports coupe alternatives in this price bracket. Cars in the same market segment offering the same kinds of diesel alternatives. Pokier versions of models like Volkswagen Scirocco, Vauxhall's Astra GTC and Seat's Leon SC all fall into this category. If you directly compare spec and engines against an equivalent 2 Series Coupe, you'll find that in reality a Scirocco wouldn't cost you much less, but the Vauxhall might save you 10 to 15% and the Seat up to 25%. A mainstream front-driven coupe alternative that might cost you a little more than this BMW is Peugeot's RCZ, and it is indeed a very sleek-looking thing, though obviously a lot less practical than this Munich model. Otherwise, there aren't too many options. If you're looking at the 220i petrol variant of this car, then you could make a £5,000 saving by choosing, say, a Mini Coupe Cooper S, which uses the same 184 brake horsepower engine, or conceivably a Kia Proceed GT. I can't see too many potential buyers wanting to do that. Those of them looking at the 228i derivative could consider the Mini Coupe JCW at a £4,000 saving, or a Renault Sport Megane at a £1,500 saving as alternatives. None of these competitors, though, really offer the all-round package of quality, practicality and driving satisfaction that's on offer here. This top M235i model requires a £35,000 budget, and as with other 2 Series Coupe variants, comes with the £1,500 option of 8-speed automatic transmission. As for direct competition, well, this variant doesn't have much. The performance it offers is significantly above pokier hot hatches like Vauxhall's Astra VXR, Seat's Leon Cupra or the Renault Sport Megane. Even Peugeot's RCZR can't keep up with this BMW, despite being not very much cheaper. And anyway, all these kinds of cars, though less expensive, can't offer the handling purity of rear-wheel drive. In fact, to truly match what's on offer in an M235i, you'd have to spend around £50,000 on a Porsche Cayman S. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a 2 Series Coupe that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous BMW has been with the standard spec. The answer is that all the key items are in place. So even at base SE trim level, you get alloy wheels of at least 17 inches in size with run-flat tyres, front fog lights, park distance control rear parking sensors, rain-sensing wipers and chromed exhaust tailpipes. Inside, buyers also get Bluetooth phone connectivity, a USB port and a decent quality 6-speaker BMW professional stereo system with a DAB tuner and controls on the Sport multifunction leather steering wheel. Plus there's an iDrive infotainment system with 6.5-inch colour screen that also displays the parameters for the drive performance control setup with its Eco Pro, Comfort and Sport modes. To add the extra Sport Plus setting to this system, you need to find the money to upgrade into either Sport or M Sport trim. Go all the way with M Sport and you also get 18-inch alloys, M Sport suspension, sport seats trimmed in cloth and Alcantara, the M body kit and an M Sport multifunction wheel, amongst other tinsel. As for M235i equipment, well, it runs to lovely M double-spoke 18-inch alloy wheels shod with high-grip tyres that aren't of the run-flat variety. Then there's an M Sport braking system and unique M Sport suspension. Plus xenon headlamps, unique variable sport steering, M aerodynamic body style, an M rear spoiler, Dakota leather upholstery, an auto-dimming rearview mirror and 2-zone automatic air conditioning. On to extra cost items. The BMW options list can be financially ruinous, but nevertheless contains some real tempters. Don't listen to the optional Harman Kardon Logic 7 sound system with its 12 speakers and multi-channel DSP amplifier if you think your resolve is going to crumble. I'd also be interested in the reversing camera and the comfort access feature that makes it possible to open the car doors and start the engine without having to use the key. Then there's the high beam assistance system that automatically dips your headlights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic, part of a visibility package that also includes adaptive xenon headlamps that turn with the bends. In theory, the optional glass sunroof seems a good idea too, but in practice it robs you of a crucial inch or two of front headroom. Bear in mind too that you'll need to pay extra for the through loading system for longer items. Don't go spending too much on items like these though until you've considered the merits of BMW's various connected drive media packages. These include the latest BMW Professional Media package with its wider 8.8-inch screen. The navigation setup can also divert you around jams with real-time traffic information and BMW online services. There are also the latest infotainment features like full speech recognition and voice control with an optional message dictation function. Plus, you can activate the clever Google Send to Car system too, this allowing you to plan your route beforehand on your PC, then remotely forward it to your vehicle. You'll have access to various BMW apps too. The BMW Connected app, allowing in-car use of web radio and linking you into social networks like Facebook and Twitter. The My BMW Remote app even enables you to remotely lock or unlock your car if you lose your keys. Safety is, as you'd expect from BMW, well accounted for, and it's the same whether you choose the base 2 Series Coupe SE or this potent performance model. There are the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a very good latest generation DSC Plus stability control system that gives you a bit of leeway when the car's switched into Sport Plus mode, but will ultimately step into the rescue if your ambition outweighs your talent. There's also tyre pressure monitoring, Isofix child seat attachments, front and rear, and anti-lock brakes with emergency brake assist to help in panic stops advertised to following motorists by automatically flashing dynamic brake lights. Options here include the driving assistant pack, which uses a camera mounted in the rearview mirror to detect a possible collision, alerting the driver and automatically initiating braking if necessary. Also included is lane departure warning to stop dozy drivers veering out of their lanes on the highway. If the worst should happen and the infotainment setup of your 2 Series has been fitted with BMW's emergency call system, the car will automatically summon help in an accident or an emergency, alerting the emergency services to your exact GPS location. Could be a lifesaver. Developing horsepower isn't particularly tricky. Doing it while preserving fuel economy and keeping emissions in check is what separates the best engineers in the automotive world from the rest. And from where I'm sitting, it would appear that a good slug of the world's best automotive engineers reside in or around Munich. Put simply, the BMW 2 Series needn't be an expensive car to run. Now, much of this is down to BMW's efficient dynamics technology, which includes features like electric power steering, brake energy regeneration, and an auto start-stop system to cut the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Plus, weight has been pared back and aerodynamics have been improved. Also playing their part in this model are the so-called aero curtains, integrated into the front apron to channel air over the wheels and around the side of the car, helping to reduce turbulence. And talking of wheels, on most 2 Series models you'll find these shod with efficient low rolling resistance run flat tyres. I say most because this M235i is the exception, fitted with some rather more hardcore Michelin Pilot Sports rubber. But the driver must also play his or her part. So there's an optimum gear shift indicator on the dash, and in the drive performance control system an Eco Pro mode that you can select. That'll focus all of the car's systems on ultimate frugality. It's also worth mentioning that opting for the 8-speed automatic gearbox rather than the 6-speed manual I'm using here will also improve your running cost returns by a few percentage points. So to the figures all that effort generates across the twin-power turbo Euro 6 engine range. Let's take the most popular 218D diesel model as an initial example. It costs the same as, say, a rival Peugeot RCZ 2-litre HDI, but is nearly 20% cleaner and more frugal. To be specific, you can expect 62.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. Figures that still look pretty good if you upgrade to the pokier 220D diesel variant, a car which manages 58.9 miles to the gallon and 125 grams per kilometre. There's also an even faster 225D variant that only comes with the efficient 8-speed auto gearbox. As a result, it can manage 60.1 miles to the gallon and 124 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you're looking at mainstream petrol power, a 220i variant will return 44.8 miles to the gallon and 148 grams per kilometre, while the 228i manages 42.8 miles to the gallon and 154 grams per kilometre. The figures for this racy M235i suggest that with manual transmission it'll manage a return of 34.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and emit 189 grams per kilometre of CO2. With the auto gearbox you can improve that to 37.2 miles to the gallon and 176 grams per kilometre. Tot up all the figures and after 3 years and 36,000 miles of M235i manual model ownership, one of these will run you to 80.1 pence per mile. Compare that to the kind of base Porsche Cayman, which will cost you around £5,000 more and travel significantly slower, yet will still cost you 87.3 pence per mile. Buy a Cayman S to match the BMW's pace and that figure jumps up to £1.12 per mile. Ouch! What else? Well, there's a condition-based service indicator, and those maintenance costs can be kept in check with 2 optional servicing packages which cover you for servicing or servicing and maintenance for 5 years or 50,000 miles, whichever comes first. Residual values should be strong as long as you don't go wild with options. Experts predict that this car will retain about 48% of its original value after the usual standard 3-year ownership period. On to insurance, another area where this 2 Series holds an advantage over its rivals. A 218D, for example, is rated at Group 20, 9 groups below, say, a comparable Peugeot RCZ. A 220D is Group 25 and a 225D is Group 33. Petrol people will find that a 220i is rated at Group 25 or 26. To insure an M235i, you're looking at figures based around a Group 39 rating. If pushed to name BMW's most convincing sports car, many would walk past the mighty M5, ignore the powerhouse M3 and M4 models, pause briefly to admire the lions of the Z4 and end up at the baby of the range, this 2 Series Coupe. With a selection of fantastic engines and the draw of an awesomely capable M model at the top end of the range, this two-door 2 Series demonstrates once again that light is right. Not for nothing does this model enjoy the lowest average owner age profile of any that the Bavarian brand makes. It'll certainly help BMW that this car doesn't really have any rivals directly able to square up to it. Sirocco-style front-wheel drive coupes just don't feel the same. Affordable rear-wheel drive models like Toyota's GT86 don't have the quality or the necessary range of engine options. And something like a Porsche Cayman is just too expensive. This 2 Series isn't perfect, of course. You might suggest that its shape isn't the most alluring we've ever seen from this Munich maker, but at the same time you'd have to admit it to be a huge aesthetic step forward from the old 1 Series Coupe. Anyway, what'll sell this thing to you is its road-going experience, its lust for life, and the way it'll remind you of what driving used to be about, when all that's ahead is a ribbon of twisting tarmac. Ultimately, it's the kind of car that BMW does better than almost anyone.